Hi, welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. Today I'm going to reveal my mock bracket, the second version of it, and compare it to Bleacher Report's mock bracket that came out today, and I'll go over the differences and agreements I have with them. I'm going to reveal mine first. I'm going to give out the matchups, my projected matchups in each region. First, the South region, your number one overall seed, Virginia. They would play the winner of the 16 playing game, UC Santa Barbara and Nichols. UC Santa Barbara is of the Big West. Nice turnaround season for them. And Nichols is of the Southland. Your 2 seed, Texas Tech, would play 15 seed Montana of the Big Sky. 3 seed Purdue would play 14 seed Charleston of the CAA. 4 seed Wichita State would play 13 seed Louisiana. They're from the Sun Belt. 5 seed Arizona would play 12 seed Middle Tennessee of Conference USA. 6 seed Arkansas would play the play-in game winner 11 seed Syracuse, 11 seed USC. Your 7 seed Rhode Island would play Seton Hall. And your 9 seed Missouri would play Creighton. In my South region, the intrigue there is that there's a lot of defensive-minded teams in this region, most notably Wichita State and Virginia, and it would be interesting if those two teams were to match up in the possible Sweet 16, and in Wichita State, Arizona would be a possible round of 32 game, and say Arizona were to win, then it'd set up Virginia against Arizona, a battle of two coaches that have never been to the Final Four in Sean Miller of Arizona and Tony Bennett of Virginia. Midwest region. Your 1 seed Michigan State against number 16 seed Riders of the MAC. It's the MAC with 2 A's. Number 2 Kansas against number 15 Bucknell. Bucknell is of the Patriot League. Number 3 North Carolina would play 14 South Dakota State. South Dakota State is of the Summit League. Number 4 Cincinnati would play number 13 Vermont. Vermont's of the America East Conference. Number 5 Alabama would play number 12 New Mexico State. New Mexico State's a very underrated team. They're from the WAC. 6th seed St. Mary's would play 11 seed St. Bonaventure. And yes, I do have St. Bonaventure as an at-large. They're of the Atlantic 10. They put themselves on the map for an at-large with the big home win Friday night against Rhode Island. They also have a road win at Syracuse on their resume, and that will help them. Let's say they don't lose in the A10 tournament before the final, then they should be able to get in. Number 7 Butler would play number 10 Miami, and number 8 Florida State would play Nevada. The intrigue here is that you get a possible Sweet 16 of Kansas against North Carolina and a possible Elite 8 of Michigan State against a possible Kansas-North Carolina winner. And also, you have, I mentioned the St. Mary's, St. Bonaventure, a matchup for the second straight season where St. Mary's would play a team from the A10. The East region, number 1 Villanova would play number 16 Wagner. Wagner is of the NEC. Number 2 Duke would play number 15 Penn. Penn's obviously of the Ivy League. Number 3 Auburn would play number 14 Winthrop. Winthrop's of the Big South. Number 4 Ohio State would play number 13 East Tennessee State. East Tennessee State is of the Ohio Valley Conference. Number 5 West Virginia would play number 12 Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago's of the MVC. Number 6 Arizona State would play number 11 NC State and number 11 Nebraska. NC State and Nebraska would be a play-in game. Number 7 Kansas State would play number 10 UCLA. Number 8 Kentucky would play number 9 Virginia Tech. The intrigue of this side is if UCLA were to get by Kansas State and Kentucky were to get by Virginia Tech, you would have UCLA against Duke and Kentucky against Villanova as a round of 32 games. And also, you would have, it's a long shot, but a possible Bobby Hurley against Duke if Arizona State were to beat Auburn in my mock bracket and go to the Sweet 16, they would have to potentially face Krzyzewski and Duke, and that'd be funny for Bobby Hurley's team, and especially Bobby, because he, as we all know, was a former Duke player. The West region. Number 1 Xavier would play the play-in game winner of North Carolina A&T of the MEAC and Grambling State of the SWAC. Grambling State's a nice story. They've won 11 straight games and have the longest win streak in college basketball. That's pretty shocking for a program that's notoriously known for being so bad and probably the worst program in college basketball over the last 6-7 years or so. Number 2 Gonzaga would play number 15 Florida Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast is from the Atlantic Sun, notably known as Dunk City. Number 3 Clemson would play number 14 Wright State. Wright State is of the Horizon League. Number 4 seed Tennessee would play the number 13 Buffalo. Buffalo is from the MAC. It's the MAC with the 1A. Number 5 Michigan would play number 12 Murray State. Murray State is from the Ohio Valley Conference. I made a mistake before. I said the East Tennessee State is from the Ohio Valley Conference. They are actually from the Southern Conference, a.k.a. the SoCon. Number 6 Baylor would play Penn State. 11 seed Penn State. And yes, I have Penn State in my field. They have the 2 big wins over Ohio State. And if they go on a nice run in the Big Ten tournament, they should be able to get in. Number 7 Oklahoma against number 10 Washington. Oklahoma is trending down, and number 7 honestly is too high for them on my board. But they'll look at their wins and say that they have a win over Kansas and a win over Wichita State, and that would bump them up to a 7, where they really should be as a 9 or a 10. And number 8 TCU against number 9 Houston. The intrigue of the West is that I just mentioned TCU and Houston, 2 Texas schools facing off in the first round. I mentioned the Grambling story. You would have a Xavier versus Gonzaga Elite 8, and that would be a rematch from last year, a possible. And most notably, I have Texas out of the tournament. They've been on a little bit of a downward spiral, but they would be my first team out. I'm going to go over Bleacher Report's bracket right now. And I'm actually going to go over their outs and whatnot. And like I mentioned, my first team out would be Texas, and then Florida, and then the other among the first 4 out, other than those 2 that I just mentioned, Texas and Florida, would be Boise State and Temple at this point. And then Louisville right there. Oregon is in the hunt. Utah is in the hunt. I don't think Louisville's going to get in. This scandal, I think, might affect the program. It might affect the team a little bit. So I don't think they get in. On to Bleacher Report's bracket. They have like last 5 in and first 5 out. Their last 5 in: Syracuse, Miami, Providence. I don't have Providence in there. My case against them is that they have a couple bad losses in the conference, most notably their home loss against DePaul. But their case for being in, and I should have mentioned them in my honorable mentions or my first 4 out, they have the big home win over Villanova. And let's say they win a game in the Big East tournament, and say a team like Syracuse loses a game that they're not supposed to lose, or Washington. They need to get a little luck, but Providence has a legit case because of that win over Villanova. And also, they have Seton Hall. Seton Hall shouldn't belong in their last 5 in. They're better than that. And Baylor, who I think should be better than that. First 5 out, according to Bleacher Report's Kerry Miller. St. Mary's, that would be bogus if they were left out of the tournament, just because a road loss at San Francisco cost them at large. I think that's bogus. Yeah, they have a loss to Gonzaga, but they also have a win against Gonzaga. But their case against them is that they have, I think, I believe, a bad road loss against Washington State. But I feel that the Gales belong, and they believe they will be, in that large team. They also have Louisville out. I just analyzed them. And point I forgot to mention is that they really don't have any signature wins. If they had knocked off North Carolina last weekend, I would have strongly considered putting the Cardinals on my list. UCLA and USC are the third and fourth teams out. I have them in. UCLA has a win over Kentucky, and USC has some notable wins as well. I believe they have a win over Oklahoma. And their fifth team out is the Washington Huskies. I have them in. I believe the Huskies should be in. They have a win over Kansas, a win over Arizona. And I think that's enough to get them in. But they have that bad loss to Oregon State. But in their defense, that was a buzzer beater, and that was an overtime road game. That's okay. If they go on a nice run in the Pac-12 tournament, they should be in. I have Washington as a 10 seed. So they're I have them in, and Bleacher Report has them out. On the horizon, are teams like, if I had it on the horizon list, I would put maybe Providence, Louisville, because I said my Boise, you can make a case belongs in there, Texas, even if Iowa State and Oklahoma State even, if they were to get some nice wins down the road. But they're on the horizon list is Penn State, who I have in. Nebraska, who I have in. St. John's, that to me is a team that's on the horizon. That's a good one. And St. John's is on a nice run right now. I think if they win out the rest of their regular season games and steal one or two in the Big East tournament, which is on their home court at Madison Square Garden, then they have a legit case. I don't think St. John's gets in. I think ultimately they'll be an NIT team. And the Utes of Utah, that's a good call for on the horizon. I mentioned them before as a possible candidate. And the Georgia Bulldogs, who I don't think should be near the field. I don't think they're that good. Although they have some nice wins over Tennessee and Florida. They have a bad loss to Massachusetts. And then San Diego State, that's not a good loss either. And on to the bracket. They have number 1 Villanova against the play-in winners, number 16 seed Savannah State and Texas Southern. Texas Southern's from the SWAC. Savannah State is from the MEAC, I want to say. And they have number 8 Arkansas against number 9 Virginia Tech. They have number 4 West Virginia against number 13 East Tennessee State. As I mentioned before, East Tennessee State is from the SoCon. Number 5 Rhode Island against number 12 Buffalo. Buffalo is from the MAC. Number 3 Cincinnati against number 14 Louisiana. Louisiana, as I mentioned before, is from the Sun Belt. Number 6 Ohio State against number 11 Baylor. So they have Baylor in, and I agree with that, although I think Baylor would be better than an 11 at this point because they have some really good wins. They have an opportunity to get another big win tonight against West Virginia at home. They have the big win over Texas Tech. They have a big-time win against Kansas. I think they're better than an 11 seed. And they have number 2 Duke against number 15 Bucknell and number 7 Arizona State against number 10 LSU. LSU should not be in the field. LSU should not be in the field. I had to say that twice because they should not be in the field. That's 3 times that I had to say those words. LSU, to me, is NIT bound, just like Georgia and Florida. I mean, I think Florida could still get in with a couple more wins and a run in the Big East tournament. The case for LSU is that they go on a run in the Big East tournament. I'm sorry, the SEC tournament, the Big East. What am I saying? And then number 15 Bucknell is a part of the Patriot League. And their case for LSU is that that Houston and Michigan were two big winners last week, and LSU beat Missouri. And in the Midwest, you have number 1 Xavier against number 16 Wagner. Wagner's from the NEC. Number 8 Florida against number 9 Texas. They have Texas in the field. I do not. I have them among my first 4 out. They have number 4 Clemson against number 13 South Dakota State. South Dakota State's from the Summit League. Number 5 Texas A&M against number 12 Loyola Chicago. Texas A&M is overseeded as a 5. I don't even have the Aggies in the field. They probably will be in the field when the day comes, but right now I don't have them in the field. They have a lot of questionable losses. They have some nice wins. They have a big win over West Virginia, and that was on the first night of the season. And when I do my bracket next week, depending on how they do this weekend, maybe I'll put them in. Maybe it's because they just lost over the weekend and they have a lot of losses. And Loyola Chicago, as I mentioned, is from the MWC. Number 3 Michigan State against number 14 Northeastern. We differ on the CAA team. They have Northeastern in there. I have Charleston. Number 6 Creighton against the play-in Miami and Providence. I made the case that Providence should not be in. I think Miami's better than an 11 seed. Number 2 Auburn against number 15 Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky's up the Horizon League. I have Wright State in there. They have Northern Kentucky. Number 7 TCU against number 10 NC State. And I really disagree about the Texas A&M thing. They either A, should not be in the field, or at worst be a 10 or an 11. In the South region, you have number 1 Virginia against number 16, play-in game between Winthrop and Lipscomb. Winthrop is from the Big South, and Lipscomb is from the Atlantic Sun Conference. I have Florida Gulf Coast in there instead of Lipscomb as the ASUN representative. Number 8, Michigan against number 9, Kansas State. Number 4, Tennessee against number 13, Murray State. Murray State's of the Ohio Valley Conference. Number 5, Gonzaga against number 12, New Mexico State. New Mexico State's of the WAC. Gonzaga's much better than a 5 seed. I think they should be a 2 or a 3. And if people lose around them and they win out the rest of the way, they have a legit shot for a 1 seed, in my opinion. Gonzaga's one of the most underrated teams in college basketball. Number 3, Texas Tech against number 14, Riders of the MAC with 2 A's. Number 6, Alabama against number 11, St. Bonaventure. So they have St. Bonaventure in the field, as they should be right now. Number 2, Purdue against number 15, Montana. Montana is of the Big Sky, as I mentioned before. And they have number 7, Houston against number 10, Butler. Butler will probably be higher than 10 because Butler has some really nice wins, including a win over Villanova when Villanova was number 1. Houston's probably overseeded as a 7, although it owns wins over Cincinnati and Wichita State. But we shall see. And last but not least, your West region, you have number 1, Kansas against number 16, Penn. Penn's of the Ivy League, as I mentioned before. Number 8, Nevada against number 9, Florida State. Number 4, Wichita State against number 13, Vermont. Number 5, Kentucky against number 12, Middle Tennessee. Number 3, Arizona against number 14, Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara's of the Big Sky. They're number 13, Vermont's of the the America East Conference. And their number 12, Middle Tennessee, is from the CUSA. I mentioned all that before it when I was doing my bracket. Number 6, Oklahoma. Very overseeded Oklahoma against the play-in game, against the play-in winner of Syracuse Seton Hall. Those are 2 11s. Syracuse probably belongs in the play-in game. Seton Hall does not. I think they're better than that. They probably should be a 9 or an 8. I have Seton Hall as a 10, but they should not be in the play-in game. They're a little bit better than that. Number 2, North Carolina against number 15, Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin is from the Southland Conference, and number 7 Missouri against number 10 Marquette. I don't have Marquette in the field. Marquette should be on the horizon to me. Your case for Marquette is that they got the big road win against Creighton. They have wins over Seton Hall and Providence. But like I said, I don't think Providence is a tournament team. I think the middle of the Big East is overrated as a whole. I think Butler and Seton Hall are really good teams. I think Creighton's a solid team. Marquette has 2 great players that can swing a game on any night. St. John's is on a nice streak right now. Georgetown's no good, even though they have some nice conference wins. And DePaul is the worst team in the Big East. And that's your bracket for Bleacher Report. And that's it for today on this short podcast. Tomorrow I'll be back with going over results from college basketball for tonight and last night. Preview the second half of the NBA season. Pick college basketball games for Wednesday night and Thursday night. Pick NBA games for the TNT doubleheader on Thursday night. And like I said, we'll preview the second half of the NBA season. We'll go over a couple big baseball moves within the last 2 days. We'll go over an NHL trade that happened today. And if anything else breaks before I do my podcast tomorrow, we'll certainly go over it. I hope you have a nice night, everybody.